Today I want to talk to you all about one of my true favorite cryptids. I know I say pretty often, just about every video, that we're talking about one of my favorites, but this time we're genuinely talking about one of my absolute favorites. So we're going to talk about Pukwudgies. I don't know what it is about Pukwudgies that I love so much, but I think they're so interesting. So let's get into it. So first I'm going to give you all the description of a Pukwudgie so that as I'm telling you this origin story and like this native lore, you can kind of wrap your head around like what it looks like and kind of visualize it in your mind. So as you can see here, Pukwudgies are said to be like little trolls. Little troll people, gray skin, you know, warts, bumps, the whole to-do. But with the exception of they have like quills or like spines coming out of their back, which is super interesting because in this lore, Pukwudgies can shapeshift into hedgehogs or porcupines, one of the two. I'm not 100% sure which one because depending on like which version of the story you're hearing, it's different, but some sort of animal within that realm. They can shapeshift to and from. So that's our vague description. You saw the picture, so we're gonna just go from there, and I'm gonna start telling you about their lore. So Pukwudgies come from Wampanoag lore. The Wampanoag tribe is native to Massachusetts, and specifically nowadays what is like the Fall River, Freetown area. So if you're familiar with the Bridgewater Triangle, it is the bottom most point on the triangle, which is home to Freetown Fall River State Forest, which is really known for its Pukwudgie sightings. And then within the Bridgewater Triangle, we also have Dighton Rock, Hockomock Swamp. There's a bunch of stuff happening there, and all of that is kind of like the central home to the Wampanoag tribe. So in the Wampanoag culture, in their lore, Pukwudgies originally were around and lived peacefully, coexisted peacefully with humans. And it started that way, and that's great. There was, like, to my knowledge, at least no tomfoolery between the Pukwudgies and the humans, and they kind of all just lived together in harmony, and everything was great. A little later down the line, in Wampanoag lore, and in Wampanoag culture, they tell of this deity called Mashup, who came in and aided the humans in a lot of great ways. And because of their relationship and their admiration for Mashup, the Pukwudgies started to get a little bit jealous that they weren't getting treated like that. So their jealousy kind of morphed and turned into a total change of behavior and a total change in the way they acted towards humans. So jealous of their relationship, of humans' relationship with Mashup, the Pukwudgies started playing tricks on humans and acting more malicious than they would previously. There's like tons of legends about things Pukwudgies could do, which include being able to practice magic, shooting humans with poison darts, messing with them, throwing rocks at them, like things like that, just generally trying to ruin their day. Yeah. So that's really interesting to me. The lore goes on to say that Mashup and his wife and his 5 sons came together and exiled the Pukwudgies to the West Coast, which is interesting. And I did a lot of digging on this because I just thought it was really, really neat. But almost every native tribe has some lore with these little tiny trickster people. That's a very common theme in almost just about really every culture's lore. There is like some sort of little being that is a trickster that like wants to mess with humans and is just not really to be messed with. And it's interesting because in Wampanoag culture, when they exiled the Pukwudgies to the West Coast, they started seeing other tribes in the West Coast started introducing those creatures into their lore. In time periods, we're talking like early, like human time. You know, there's not a specific date of when this stuff started happening, but if you look at the time frames, they're kind of, you know, they kind of line up with each other, and it's really interesting. So in the lore, we have the Pukwudgies, they're exiled to the west coast, and then the humans and Mashup and his family are all living peacefully together in this area of Massachusetts. Over time, Pukwudgies started to make their way back to Massachusetts. Again, don't have an exact frame of time for you there because I just don't know. Could have been 6 months, could have been 6 days, could have been 6 years, not sure. Anyway, they made their way back to Massachusetts and they were pretty angry because, you know, they got kicked out of their homes and sent across the country, so they were pretty mad about it. And to get their revenge, they ended up killing Mashup and his 5 sons and his wife. So lots of bad stuff happened there. That's not great. We don't love that. And then instead of trying to rebuild their relationship with humans, they continued to just be on this path of being a trickster, being malicious, and just trying to mess with them. So unfortunately, that's kind of where we're at today. The area where Pukwudgies are really known for in the State River, or Fall River State Forest, and the Freetown State Forest, and the town of East Freetown, and Fall River, Massachusetts, and this whole chunk that is known as the Bridgewater Triangle, still to this day has Pukwudgie sightings that are reported often, which is really crazy to me, and I want to talk about some of those sightings as well. Okay, so our first sighting was by a woman named Joan. If you have never been to the Fall River and Freetown State Forest, it is a big state forest that has a lot of hiking trails through it. There's like a public pool, there's picnic benches. My boyfriend and I went there recently, and I'm going to sidebar that because we'll talk about that after, because we had our own experience that I will elaborate on. But if you've never been there, it is beautiful. There are so many hiking trails and they're all great, and it's a very popular spot down in that area to go hiking through the woods. So our first sighting comes from a woman named Joan, who was hiking through these trails when she saw a little troll-like creature that she described to be about 2 feet tall, with pale gray skin, hairy arms, hair on its head, and she described it as having really, really short legs, like its body was mostly torso, and like really tiny legs. And then she also had described it as having glowing green eyes and a nose almost like a canine, which is really interesting because that's not something that usually makes its way into the descriptions or artist sketches of these creatures. But that's weird. That's cool. Also, it's worth noting that Pukwudgies are known to be not just like one singular thing. Like, it's not just one Pukwudgie. It is like many Pukwudgies. So as with most things that there are many of in species, like there is some variation in appearance. So this woman reported seeing it while she was on her hike, and later when she had gotten home, she lived in the same county as this state forest, and when she got home she was kind of tormented for weeks by the same creature, tapping on her windows, knocking on her doors while she was sleeping, trying to mess with her. And there are a lot of sightings that end in people reporting that these creatures have followed them home to continue to mess with them, which is crazy. That's really scary to me, because I feel like a lot of times when you go somewhere and you see something weird, you're like, great, I went to this place and I saw something weird here, and you don't think of, oh well, it came home with me, now it lives in my house with me, like now I have to deal with this at my home. It's like something that you think of as two separate things, like you had this experience here and then this is your home. But to have that thing follow you back to your house is really creepy to me, and as somebody who like does amateur ghost hunting a lot and paranormal investigation very often, it's something I think about a lot because of the possibility of that happening, and it really freaks me out. So for Joan, I hate that. I'm so sorry. I hope it has stopped tapping on your windows. Okay, so the next eyewitness sighting that I'm going to share with you guys is from a man named Tom. Keep in mind too that these two sightings that I have read to you now have happened in the year 2020. Like, these are very, very recent ones, and it's not hard to find even more recent sightings online, because this area is supposedly so filled with Pukwudgies that it's like you can't escape them no matter where you go. So we have Tom, and Tom was again also hiking in the Fall River Freetown State Forest, where he saw a glowing ball of light that was kind of bouncing down the trail, and he followed it, for a while. And when he finally had reached it, it disappeared, and he turned around to see a Pukwudgie behind him. His description was incredibly similar to our first sighting, Joan. Same general thing. The only difference was that in his sighting, he saw it run away with an unearthly moan, is what he described it as, which is creepy. And then a couple weeks later, our buddy Tom here was driving. He parked in the parking lot of the state forest. You know, my dad does that sometimes. He just parks and he goes through his emails and then he goes home. I don't know why. I don't know why people do that. But Tom did that. And he sat down. He's come home from work and he just wanted to chill for a few minutes. So he parked in the state forest parking lot and he's going through his phone and he's hanging out, and he looks up and he sees a Pukwudgie looking at him from about 20 feet away on the tree line. He gave the same exact description, just minus the sound this time. I guess it didn't moan at him this time. But he gave the same exact description, and upon giving this description, he also said that it was definitely a different one than he had seen the first time, which is interesting, because it kind of just reconfirms that there are different creatures, different, I don't know, like beings amongst this like species of cryptid. And then he reported that very suddenly his car radio started going off. His car was off. He's sitting in the parking lot by himself with his car off. He's got his lights on. He's just chilling. And his car radio started going off on its own, and then his engine roared to life, and he said, you know what? I think it's time for me to leave. And I think I would have agreed with him. So that's really interesting. Like the ball of light to me is really cool, because I feel like that's a common thing with a lot of things like this. Like I don't know how to explain what I'm thinking in my head, but glowing balls of light are something that you see in this realm kind of all over the place. Like they pop up in a lot of cryptid sightings. They pop up in a lot of paranormal settings. They pop up a lot in alien encounters, and I think it's just like the universal sign for something weird is about to happen. You see a glowing ball of light and you're like, okay, great, I got it, something strange is going to happen. Yeah, and that's just like, I think it's such a common occurrence in these like situations that there's no way that it's not somehow connected to each other. So now I want to talk to you guys about my personal experiences, and I've got 2 to share with you, which are super interesting, and yeah, so here we go. Also, sidebar, the town of East Freetown, which I love this so much, had put up, I think in 2017 or 2018, it might have been earlier than that, I know that it was a couple years ago, put up signs on the town, in the town, on the street that you get into the state park on, that were Pukwudgie crossing signs, and it was the whole, it looked like a crosswalk sign, except it had a silhouette image of a Pukwudgie on it, and it said Pukwudgie crossing on it. I'm really bummed because when we went down there, I did not get to see it, unfortunately. I think somebody probably stole it. I don't know, I was really upset that I didn't get to see it, but I think that's really cool, and I appreciate them kind of trying to normalize people seeing like these strange things, like that's really cool to me. Like if you've got a local cryptid, normalize people seeing it. It'll make people feel a little bit less crazy, and also it's just cool. Like really embrace that you've got that going on. I love that. So anyway, we went hiking. We walked through one of the shorter trails. It took us about an hour and a half. It was not short, but it was shorter than the rest of them, and we didn't want to go too deep into the woods. It was one of those days that was like 96 degrees, crazy humid. It had just rained. It was hot and gross out, and we were like, you know what, we're gonna do one of the short ones and see what we can find. While we were walking through the woods, and I have my GoPro the whole time, I filmed the whole thing. I might put it up separately. If you guys want to watch it, you can. I did not catch anything interesting, or at least anything that I noticed on my GoPro. I do still have the footage, so if anyone wants to see it, I will gladly upload it and you guys can look through it. Like I said, when I reviewed it, I didn't find anything out of the ordinary, and it's a lot of just me being bad at walking through the woods, so it's a little bit embarrassing, but you know, if it's requested, I'll definitely put it up for you guys to watch. Alternatively though, my boyfriend had my Nikon camera and he was taking pictures. You know, as somebody who does paranormal investigation a lot, and he usually comes with me, he's gotten very good at knowing to just constantly be taking pictures and like trying, you know, take 2 shots of one frame, move on, take 2 shots of another frame, so that you know when something is amiss in the first one and you can see the difference. So we got a lot of weird orb material, and so I'm actually going to put these pictures on my ghost hunting blog, which the link is going to be down in the bottom in my link tree, so if you'd like to check that out, feel free. It is just retellings of my experiences when paranormal investigating various cemeteries and haunted bridges and houses, etc. So if that interests you, feel free to check it out. Anyway, so we got some weird orb material, weird shapes, like there are a lot of spots, which I have a theory about this, and you guys can feel however you want about it, but this is my theory. My personal theory is that Pukwudgies cannot be photographed, much like a vampire, except I think that when they get photographed, they just get blurry. And I think that because in a lot of the photos that we captured in this state forest, there are random splotches in the pictures that are just really blurry, but in a specific shape of like a person. And that sounds crazy, and I know, I am aware, but it's weird. And while, so we, back to my original point, we were walking through the forest. We got about halfway through. We had to stop for a few minutes. We found a little bench, a tree that had been carved all over. You know, it had a lot of weird markings in it. There were some, you know, standard like a heart with some initials and things, but there were a lot of weird symbols on it too. And we found some like things that I assume were from a ritual. Just stuff that was kind of unsettling to find in the middle of a forest that's supposedly teeming with little creatures that want to kill you. But we stopped there for a little bit because there was a little bench and we hung out. We got up to get moving, and my boyfriend and I both heard what sounded like someone running at us from the part of the trail that we had just come down. And we both turned and we didn't see anything, but we heard something kind of duck into the bush. So we're thinking maybe somebody else is like behind us, maybe it's an animal, whatever. We keep walking. If I do end up posting that footage, you're gonna hear me get really scared because it freaked me out a lot. It was one of those moments that was like it's like suddenly very real. And I was like, oh my God, we're really doing this. This is really scary. Like, we might actually see something weird, and like, yeah, it would be sick in hindsight, but for now, in the middle of it, it's scary. So we keep walking. Shortly down the trail, my boyfriend stops and he says, I just saw something behind us, and it was like 2-3 feet tall, it was gray, and it looked like a person. And I'm like, that's scary. That's exactly what we came here looking for, and that's freaky. And while, you know, we spent the entire rest of the trail being very on edge, very alert, trying to figure out what was following us, because ever so often we would hear the same scampering footprints coming from behind us, running at us down the trail, and then Ian would turn around and say, I just saw a flash of something run, and then we'd go, great, so it's following us. That's scary. We reached another point, and this is just something that's weird. I don't think it's necessarily related to the Pukwudgies or to anything else that I've talked about so far, but we got to a point where we took a break because it was, like I said, very hot, very muggy, and we were very tired, and I didn't even notice this until I was reviewing my footage afterwards. We stopped at a log that somebody had spray painted the word help onto, which is crazy. Like, I filmed the log on my GoPro, but did not even recognize in my head that it said help, and it was just unsettling to watch afterwards, because I was like, what happened that somebody spray painted this word on this downed tree? Like, that's weird. Anyway, we got off of so the way the trails are is like there are walking trails, there are driving trails, there are horse trails, whole bunch of stuff. So we got off of the walking trail that was through the dense part of the forest, and onto one of the horse trails. So it's much wider, much easier to like spread out and see things, whereas like before we had been walking straight up through bushes. So while we're walking down that trail, I constantly was feeling like something was watching me, something was following us, and I turned around a lot, and multiple times I saw the same kind of creature that my boyfriend described, a small, gray, human-looking creature jump off of the side of the trail into the tree line. Like, I saw it a couple times, and I was kind of like whipping back and forth so much that I just kept my GoPro straight, because I was like, if I turn it with me, it's just going to be a blur of motion. So I didn't catch any of it on camera, and I'm really mad at myself for doing that, but what are you gonna do? So then, you know, we continued on, we got to the end. Ian continued to take a bunch of pictures the whole time, and it was just really cool to go through them and look at all the orbs and stuff that we found. And we also found this weird ball of light that was moving in an L shape, but like sideways. And I'm very certain it wasn't a bug, because of I have been doing paranormal investigations since I was 8 or 9 years old. And at this point, I'm pretty certain I know what a bug looks like when you catch it. And also in other pictures, we had caught a bug, we compared it, we did a lot of analyzing, trying to figure out what it was, and determined that it was in no way a bug. So it's just this weird ball of light that's moving in a really weird shape, and it left a trail with it, and it's very strange. Again, it's going to be in my blog if you want to see it. It's very interesting. And when we initially went through the pictures, I didn't catch this, but I caught it afterwards because I wanted to revisit them. There is one of those weird blurs of scenery in the shape of a human, a couple feet off from where that ball of light is. Mind you, we didn't see that ball of light in person. Like, we did not actually see that with our eyes. It's just something we caught in the picture. Anyway, so we finish our hike and we go and we're sitting on the picnic bench. We're being real cute, having a picnic, you know, doing our thing. And there were rocks falling from, not falling, they were being thrown from one of the bushes behind us, and they were kind of arching up and falling directly in front of me, because I was facing that way, into the middle of this opening where there was no tree cover, so it was just an open circle of like sunlight, and I was watching these rocks fall out of the bushes and fall into the middle, which is crazy and weird. And then I noticed after a while we were sitting, and I had turned my body, sitting on the picnic bench, and I was looking at a clearing that's in one of the back parts that leads to one of the trails, and I was watching, and this may have well been a child. You know, it was probably like, I'd have to say like close to 1,000 feet away from me. I'm really bad at judging distance, so it could have been closer, but it was far enough away that I saw a black figure, you know, too dark, too far for me to make out any details about it, except for that it was essentially like looking at a silhouette of a person peeking out from behind trees, watching us. And I sat there for a while, and I watched it in that area to see if it would happen again, or if it was something that I had just kind of made up because I wanted to see something. And then it happened again, and I was like, great, so I'm not just making this up, I am actually seeing it. And then right before we left, I saw the same creature peek out one more time and then dart across the clearing into the woods. And I was like, that's crazy. Great. We ended up leaving after that. We wanted to go we're gonna go to Profile Rock. I did not realize that it had crumbled, and I was very upset to learn that. We went to Dighton Rock, and we did not quite get to go to Hockomock Swamp. It was just too hot for us, so we went home. Shortly after that, I moved into a new apartment. My new apartment, the one that I currently live in now, is surrounded by a swamp, and which I love. We have gone off the deep end making up swamp names for our house. But it's surrounded by this weird swamp and then lined with woods. It's a really cool place to live. We really enjoy it. But we have this little deck out back, and this is my second experience. It's weird. We've been dealing with it for a while, and recently it's gotten a little bit better. But I'll tell you about it. So basically, we have this little deck out back, and we would sit out there, you know, and smoke and hang out and have drinks. And it's tiny. It only fits about 4 people, but you know, we'd sit out there. There's only 4 of us that live here, so we'd sit out there and just hang out. And we were noticing very often that rocks like this big were being thrown at our house. Not just like kicked up, not just like tossed, like thrown at our house. To the point where there are marks in the siding where the rocks have hit. Shortly after that started happening, you know, we started getting weirded out. We kind of just assumed that there are some kids that live in the apartment complex behind ours, and we kind of just assumed that they were messing with us. So we kind of wrote it off. We got this weird baby doll that a friend of ours gave us, and it sits on the corner of our porch and watches the woods. It's very weird, but we like it. And we started to notice that the baby was covered in random like battle wounds. Like it's suddenly like covered in scuffs and like really dirty, like it's been like having the rocks thrown at it, which it didn't look like that when we first got it. It was dirty, I'll tell you. It was not in perfect condition, but it was not as bad as it looks now. And then the rocks started to get worse. We'd have more rocks thrown at us. There'd be some. It was happening mostly at dusk, but then it started happening during the day as well. There was a time I was outside with my boyfriend, and a rock missed my head by a couple inches to hit the opposite side of the building, or the opposite side of our porch, rather. And they were getting like really close to us, and so and also our things were getting broken out there. You know, we had citronella candles out there, we had like cups and stuff, and we'd come out and they'd be shattered. So we started to be like, okay, so what actually is going on here? Because at this point, you know, we started to watch when the rocks would hit, because we'd be out there when it happens. We'd be like, great, a rock hit, where are the kids? And we turn and you can see through the woods directly behind our house. It's not super thick. You can see the building behind. But because of that, we were watching and noticing that the children were not the culprits, because they just weren't there. So we started to be like, okay, well, we're going to look into it and try to figure out what it actually is. Me being the person that I am was like, here's a list of cryptids or weird phenomena that this could possibly be. Some of the things that we considered were wood devils, which are New Hampshire's Sasquatch-esque cryptid, Pukwudgies, the Fae. We're hoping it wasn't that one. Aliens, something paranormal. We had a whole bunch of reasons, like a whole bunch of things that we thought it could possibly be. And squirrels. Like, we also thought that it could possibly be animals too. We weren't just like, oh yeah, it's gotta be weird. Like, we were like, it might be squirrels too. But it started to get weirder. We were starting to hear a lot of stuff and see things right next to us on the porch. Like, we'd be on the porch and we'd see it right next to us, and then we'd look and it'd be gone. We saw a lot of movement, hear a lot of like running, and we started seeing weird lights in the tree right behind my house. Which is where we kind of were like, okay, so it's definitely something. Like, we can no longer assume that it's just a squirrel, because we started to see weird balls of lights go up into the sky in the tree and kind of zip around and move about as if it was nothing. And one of my roommates who had seen one of the bigger balls of light that we saw described it as like, if you were to put a glow stick inside of a volleyball, that's what it looked like. So we started seeing stuff like that. We started hearing more stuff, and we finally were just kind of like, you know what, we're gonna leave an offering or something out for this creature and see if maybe we can like have some sort of understanding where like we will give you gifts. Please stop throwing rocks at our house and us. And on the recent full moon, we left out a tray of various items. We left like a cookie that we had made, some plant clippings from plants that we grew. I made a piece of bone jewelry and some other little trinkets, and we left them out there. And I mean, I think it was accepted because we haven't had a single rock thrown at our house since then. And this is crazy, and you don't need to tell me, but I'm not going to accept them. We keep finding little things left right on the edge of our porch. There was a ball of yarn, which that could actually belong to one of my roommates. I am not sure. My brain wants to be like, it's an offering, it's a gift. I don't know where it came from. None of us have yarn, so we've just kind of assumed that it was a gift of some sort. We found new rocks lined up on the railing and things like that, and we have not touched any of them because we're a little bit smarter than that. But I truthfully have gone about this whole experience like assuming that it has been Pukwudgies. And I looked it up, and I mean, this should come as a surprise to nobody, but we live on native land because everyone lives on native land because it is all what? Stolen. Anyway. It's weird. It's just very strange, and you know, we've seen a lot of weird stuff, and I don't know, I'm getting a little more rambly than I normally do, but that is my experience with what I perceive to be, especially the second one. I am sold for sure that the first one was Pukwudgies, like we went there looking for, and that we definitely experienced them in that setting. Second one, I personally am convinced that it's Pukwudgies based on what we've been seeing, what we've been hearing, and what we've been experiencing. But you can never be sure. So, you know. So that's like, I think that's about all I have for you guys. Yeah, I mean, it's worth noting that Pukwudgie sightings are often like really, really high in areas of high strangeness. So where you've got a lot of like UFO sightings and other weird phenomena happening, like a lot of paranormal stuff. If you're not familiar with the Bridgewater Triangle, you should absolutely look it up. It's very cool. It is just this weird area of Massachusetts where the high strangeness is so high that they just slapped a name on it, and they were like, great, now you know, it's weird stuff happening here. It's very cool though. This has definitely been my longest video. If you have reached the end here, if you've made it all the way to the end with me, I appreciate you very much. And I'm going to wrap this up now just because it's getting a little bit much. But I hope you guys have enjoyed. If you have any experiences with Pukwudgies, if you are from the New England area, or, you know, if you're not and you have experiences with other types of little tricksters that may not necessarily be called Pukwudgies where you're from, please let me know because I love them and I love hearing stories about them. I really would like to know what you guys feel about this, so please let me know down in the comments. And again, if you're interested in my paranormal investigation blog, the link will be right down in the bio in my link tree. Thanks so much for watching. I hope to see you guys next week. Bye!